raises important questions about what we might be unconsciously projecting onto our children and how we can better support their growth by managing our own well-being. Joining me for today's conversation are these three beautiful queens. We have Athena Gardner, a CPA and wealth coach. We have my girl Constant Carter, wealth activist. We have Laura Lalaki, who is an international real estate agent. And so before we get into our topic and start dissecting this, we're going to go to the video for those of you that haven't seen it, and then we're going to jump into today's discussion. Let's go ahead and roll to the video.
Do you guys know the number one outcome or the number one indicator for how children grow up to thrive, whether or not they actually do?
I thought it was the daddy in the house.
Absolutely not.
What's
Believe
that?
it or not, it is the quality of their mother's happiness.
Wow.
Damn.
The quality of their mother's happiness is the number one indicator as to whether or not a child will grow up to thrive. Because if you have a depressed mother, if you have an anxious mother, if you have a mother with post-traumatic stress disorder who is having to disconnect from her own body, she cannot show up to nurture you. She cannot show up to support you. She cannot fully step into that space. And what she will teach you about being in relationships with other people, whether you can trust them, whether you can trust yourself, whether you can actually be committed and connected to somebody and know that they will reciprocate that to you in a healthy way. She teaches you that not through her words, but through her actions. And so what I will say to you, sis, is that you have to decide for yourself how you want your children not to just grow up in your house, but to grow up in this world, because you are teaching them that right now through how you are living your life and showing them how life is supposed to be in this roof with this man.
All right. Ooh, honey, in the chat, let me know what you think about that clip. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Okay, I'm about to go to the queens. I'm going to ask the queens, see what they say. But if you are tuned in right now to Fly New York Money and you just watched that clip, give me your thoughts and feedback in the chat. We're going to start with you, Constance. I saw you doing the woo, woo, woo. What were your thoughts on what Dr. Spirit had to say in that clip?
Let me tell you, this, when I saw this video earlier, it spoke to the depths of my soul, y'all. As a mother, a Black mother, who my number one priority is my children, who everything I do is about my children, are my why. They're the reason why I get up every day, every morning. They're the reason why I go so hard. They're the reason why I hustle. They're the reason why I've had the amount of success I've had, is because of my children. And, I've been through a divorce, which was pretty tumultuous. And I sacrificed it over and over just through situations. My kids be like, "Mama, why you ain't leave before? Mama, why you stay so long?" I'm like, "Cause y'all, I was sacrificing my life because of y'all. And you bastards don't no, not I didn't say that. But I'm saying I sacrificed a lot of my happiness so that I thought it was the better thing for them, and didn't understand that I extended levels of toxicity that they had to be exposed to by staying in that situation. So I didn't understand what it meant for me to be happy. And if I'm happy, they're happy. And so now, we be chilling, we have fun, and we clown and we talk. And right before I got on here, I was in the bathroom doing my makeup, and my two boys was in there, and we were just, talking about whatever. But, I'm trying to tell them how to be successful. Like, you can't be starting, I'm trying to pour into them the same things that I do for myself. I'm like, look at me as the measure, because I get up every morning very early. I work out. I do all this stuff before you guys even get up. I didn't finish half my workload early in the morning. And I'm trying to teach them those same core principles. But that right there, it speaks volumes to a woman like me. The other thing I want to say real quick is, I noticed he said father in the home. And that's the thing about it, is when we talk about kids and their behavior, first thing they blame is the mother. Oh, the kid ain't doing, because of the mama. Or if the man's a deadbeat, well, you chose him. So we get the brunt of the responsibility on everything. So, but I really love what she said, because I believe it's absolutely 100% unequivocally true.
All right. We're going to go to you, Athena. What are your thoughts on this video around a mother's happiness and a child's success?
I've seen this video. I saw it months ago. Very, very powerful video. And to me, it really was in line with what I have known for a while. So I'm a part of this other group, and we had a therapist, a psychologist therapist, come and speak to us about mother wounds was a topic. And she had basically said that from all the data that the quality of the mother's life significantly impacts everything about the development of a child, their brain function, their nervous system regulation, how they receive and communicate love, and all of the different mental and physical disorders that happen when that is not there. And she also said in that meeting that the biggest factor contributing to that is whether or not the woman is able to show up as the full expression of herself and is in a safe and happy environment. So the quality of her partner severely impacts how that woman is able to show up. So from the standpoint of heterosexual relationships and dating with relationships with men, the man's job in supporting the level of support he gives to that woman is going to greatly and significantly impact the overall growth and elevation of the children that they have together. I also think that from the other side of it, where there's toxic mothers, it has like detrimental effects on the child. And I think that is something that we need to explore. As you know, in our community, relationship dynamics are not the best. And I think the children are suffering for it.
All right, we're going to round this out with you, Lala, and then we're going to go and dive into this a little bit deeper. What are your thoughts?
I think I have a unique perspective because I have two moms. I have a birth mother who left me at one of my aunt's house at the age of 3, who became my mama. Joyce, my birth mother, never came back. She got into a little bit of trouble. But my aunt, Mama, raised me, and she is the first loving hand that I remembered. So she had a lot to do with my happiness, and also seeing her happy and helping her in the kitchen and showing love, not just telling love, but showing love. When I talk about Mama, I still feel my mother's hands. That's how warm she is to me. I feel her hands and I feel her love around me. Now, on the flip side, I did meet my birth mother when I was 18 years old. She had other children. So I have siblings, and they had a really hard life because she was a tumbleweed. Joyce was a tumbleweed. She was just lived different, and that's the way that she chose. But that's how her children ended up growing up too. So they didn't have the same experience. So when I met my siblings, I said to them, sometimes I wondered why she left me and kept you guys. And they looked at me and said, we wish she would have left us. And, because you had it better. So the grass is not always greener on the other side, but I can definitely attest and know that my life would have been completely different had I grown up with my birth mom. So yes, my mother's happiness had a direct effect on me. And I'm glad to say I'm sensitive, and I'm glad to say that I love to love. And I'm glad to say that I like to mother others as well. Even though I do have a grown son, I've got nieces and nephews. It makes a difference.
Lala, I want to just add to that. I remember talking to my kids because, of course, they grew up for the most part in a 2-parent household. And I was telling my older two, I was like, I feel really bad for your younger siblings because you guys had both your parents much longer than they did. And they said, they're lucky. I was like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so when there's happiness in the house, it trickles down to everybody. So
yes.
So I agree and disagree. I see what Eric said. Eric said, this is a slanted convo as most convos y'all have. Not even
women.
Daddy explain. First question, where is his daddy? And first we didn't say his or her, but I get the sentiment. Where is the daddy, right? In the comments, if you're just tuning in, this is Fly Nubian Money. We're talking about the number one factor for your child's growth and success revealed. The video that we just watched said everything hinges on the mother, basically. If the mother is happy, the child is happy. And so we're breaking that down. And so what I would say is I was raised by a single mother. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And in a lot of respects, I understand the sentiment of what is being said. If the mother is happy and doing well, it trickles down. If the mother is toxic or not well, that trickles down too. So I agree that what children see impacts them. But I don't think it all hinges on one person. I think it's the mother and the father, or the woman and whatever man is in that home, because we mimic what we see, whether it's intentional or not, whether it's conscious or not. And I also say that we teach our children right or wrong, good, bad, or indifferent. I used to tell my son's father all the time, based on how he showed up, you're teaching him. You're either going to show him the man that he wants to be or the man that he doesn't want to be like. So no matter what, whomever is in leadership over that child determines their level of happiness and what they learn and how they grow. Whether that is the mother, the aunt, the grandmother, the grandfather, whomever it is that is instilling and or putting seeds into that child. Now, I say all that to say,
but maybe that's the assumption, though. Maybe that's the assumption, Lene. Maybe that's the assumption is the mother is the one who's instilling. Maybe that's what she's saying. I don't know, but go ahead.
And that takes me to my point, which is usually it's the mother, right? Mothers usually 9 times out of 10 are going to be the one who's left there with the bag. Fathers get to, and I want to make sure I say this in a way that it's not male bashing. We're not coming for fathers, because we do have the other side. We have a couple of men that gave their perspective. We're going to get into that too. Usually it's just that the mother is the one that's there. And so that's why her sentiment makes sense, because it's usually the mother's that's there. But I have a mentee who was raised by her father. Her mother was not there. So everything that she is and all of who she is and how she speaks and talks and walks, she gives to her father, because that is the person who planted happiness and gave her security and provided for her. So it's whoever is, I think I like what we said about the caregiver, the person who's planting the seeds. Again, 9 times out of 10, it is the mother, but it's not always. So how do you feel about the idea that our children reflect our emotional state and well-being?
Can I really quick, Lene, to piggyback on what you said about the father, just before you go there. My dad was probably the most influential one in my life. So my parents had a really tumultuous marriage, right? So they got together when my mom, I think, was like 14 or 15, and my dad was like 4 years older than her. And they had my brother at 16, and then my mom was 16, and then at 19 they had my sister. 24 they had me. So they was always separate, get back together. And so they ended up, by the time I was maybe 5, they got back together for the longest period of time, from the 5 to 14. But my mom was always the free spirit. She was out kicking it with a girlfriend. She was doing her thing. She was in the house, but she was just kind of and she admits to this day, like, I wasn't the best mom. But she tries to be a really great grandmother. She's an excellent grandmother, but she knows that she wasn't the most present mother. But my father was there. My father has always been consistent. He was my Superman. He was my superhero until he got married when I was 18 and kicked me out of the house. But in my formative years, my dad was that person that I looked to. And actually, when I got married, I thought I was marrying somebody more like my father. And just in our conversations, because that was extremely important. Having a good father, that was the thing that influenced me. So you are 100% right when you say, I think it's the caregiver, the person who's there and that's consistent. That's what makes a difference. And I model my parenting after my father.
Ooh, that's a good word. And you said something that is very true. So I was raised by my mother. I had a somewhat tumultuous relationship with my father. And so me and him growing up, we used to clash a lot. But our relationship mended when I had my son, because he was an amazing grandfather. Like, he was an amazing.
It's like their do-over, right? It's like their do-over.
It is. And it made our
when you hit grandparent stage, it's over.
I heard it's a beautiful thing. I heard it's like a whole nother level, and I'm patient, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Not too fast, but I look forward to it.
Yeah, I think we learn from our mistakes. So what are some ways that mothers and or primary caregivers and or fathers, this is a whole conversation, can ensure that they are projecting positive emotions and behaviors onto their children? We'll start with you, Lala.
Well, my thing is showing the truth. You're not always happy all the time. And the fact that, I went to prayer meeting with my mama and I heard everything that she poured out to God at prayer meeting. And that wasn't always a beautiful thing, but that showed that vulnerability is also a part of love, meaning that you are not just a happy person walking around all day long. We all have something that we're going through, but how you choose to go through it. And to lean in to whatever emotion that you're going through and trust the process is a big part of love. I am grateful for that. I to this day still hear, and I'm talking old fashioned. Okay, nowadays these kids got all these fancy songs and stuff. I'm talking wasn't no music at prayer meeting. It was the humming and the moaning and then praying. And that's where I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable. And then afterwards, we all hugged, we all kissed. And if I had said something in my prayer, I never will forget my very first prayer. I was stumbling because I was, oh my God, I'm praying out loud. There's people here and I don't know what to say. So, and I noticed that when we got home, after my aunties also praised me, but when we got home, Mom sat down with me and explained to me that I should never be afraid or scared how I pray, because she will always be there for me. That's a form of love. So that's any kind of support to me, whatever you're going through. I got pregnant at 16 years old. The first thing out of my mama's mouth was, baby, you wasn't the first and you sure ain't gonna be the last. You're gonna finish school and we're gonna do what you need to do. We're gonna pick up and move on. And so those are the things that keep me going, to not be down on myself, to know that yes, you may be going through adversity, but through love and through community and through the love of your mother. Even now, I lost her at 21 years old. I'm 54 now. I still hear her words. So it's really important to show that you can be vulnerable as well.
I love this conversation.
I do too. It's so good. So let me go to the chat real quick. So today we are talking about the number one factor for your child's growth and success, right? And so we watched this clip, and it's this PhD doctor that is saying that the number one indicator whether a child will thrive is closely related to the quality of their mother or primary caregiver's happiness. And so we are breaking that down today. If you're just tuning in, you can always catch us live at 1:00 p.m. Eastern here or you can text the word Queens to 87948. In the chat, tell me if you were raised by your mother or raised by your father or raised in a two-parent household. So the two-part, who were you raised by? And second, do you feel you got your emotional examples from your mother or your father? Constance, then I'm going to come to you, Athena. I don't know if you have children, but I'm going to come to you next. What strategies can parents use to regulate their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to avoid creating suffering for their children?
Well, I'm going to tell you, just like Lala said, being human, right? Because one of the things my daughter told me, she said, Mom, I thought until you went through that divorce, I thought you were basically like superhuman. I thought you were perfect. I didn't know that you like went through stuff like we went through. I just thought that nothing fazed you. And then your humanity seeped in, right? So there are life's events that happen, and fortunately or unfortunately, sometimes they are able to see the humanity in you by virtue of what you go through. But I tell you, their whole lives, I've always been extremely intentional. I worked very hard. My motto used to be, nobody works harder than Constance Carter. And I did. I worked very hard. I was gone. First one in the office, last one out. My son, I remember my son would call me like, Mom, come home. But I was very intentional. I didn't have a whole lot of time. But the quality of time that I did, one of the things I was always very mindful of is, if I don't got 100%, I only got 25%, I'm gonna give them 100% of my 25%. That intentional time that I spend with them is extremely important. The quality of the time. If I'm there all day and I'm fussing and arguing and whooping and all that, that's not productive time. It's just time. It might be toxic time, but the time that we do get to spend, it should be productive. And so I think that's what's extremely important being a parent. The other thing is, I always ask my kids, I say, look, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate me. And some of them will be like, Mom, you're a 10 because you're so great. And some will be like, you ain't no 10, you a 7. Why am I a 7? Because you ain't perfect. But I'm like, but how can I get to be a 10? Because my goal is I just want to be the best mom that I can be. And they tell me things. Mama, get off your phone sometimes. Mama, get off the internet sometimes. Mama, stop working sometimes. Why don't you spend a little bit more time with us? Why don't you give us a little bit more quality time? So they are very clear about what they want. My oldest son right now, he's like, I feel like I'm the only one that everybody got beef with. Negro, you the common denominator, so it just, but you have those conversations and they're real, so you just being intentional, being real with your children because you're human.
Oh, I like that. So we're going to go to a couple of the slides that have some of the people that supported the video. So we could pull those up. So we had Tax Pro KK said, this is the best video I have ever seen in my entire life. Somebody else said, who is this lady? I would love to follow her. Somebody else says, wonder how the single father handles these responsibilities. And we're going to get into that in a second. Let me see some other ones that support it. Rachel said, my mom had all that stuff and I am definitely thriving. I have a wonderful life. She was hardworking and I loved the best she could. And I was smart enough to notice when she was suffering and that some of the trauma inflicted on me and my brother wasn't the real her. I always knew she was doing the best she could for us and she tried to put us first, even through her own issues. Okay. So Athena, let's talk about that. What are some ways that mothers and or primary caregivers, right, can ensure that they're projecting positive emotions and behaviors onto their children instead of what we're dealing with and going through? Because that last comment was kind of like, even when she was dealing with stuff that rolled down on us, we knew she didn't mean it. So what do you think are some ways that women and or caregivers and or fathers can make sure that we don't project that onto our children?
I think that mothers and caregivers and fathers or whoever the primary parent is needs to take time to take care of their own mental, physical, emotional health, because the offshoot of that does trickle down. If you are frustrated with work and you bring that same anger home, or you're frustrated with your relationship, whether it's your marriage or you're dating someone at the time, and you just take it out on the kids, or because your patience has ran out because you have given your patience out all day, then that is something that needs to be worked on. I remember seeing between my mother, so backstory on me, I have a mother and a stepmother. I do not talk to my mother and I do not have a current relationship with my mother. My mother was very emotionally and mentally abusive towards me growing up. My dad and my stepmom were the ones who raised me all these years. And I remember as a kid having to be forced to spend time with my mother, even though I didn't want to, because she just did not have the capacity to love me or anybody, in my opinion. So, but if I analyze that situation and now understanding as an adult what that is, my grandmother was not great either. And she learned all of that through my grandmother because I was able to see it. So that mother wound thing is something that is definitely generational. I always saw my mother working and giving the best version of herself to other people, but not me. So another thing that I feel like anyone who is a caregiver of a child is you have to question how come you can behave and be so nice and courteous to strangers, co-workers, everyone around you, because you want to put on this facade that you are a good person, but your children are at home suffering or don't have quality time with you, or you have no patience for, or you lack emotional needs. And I also know that we didn't have time, or I didn't really send this video in, but that meeting I had with the psychologist that did go into mother wounds, they said, regardless if you are raised by someone else, regardless of what that is, that connection between you and your mother from the womb, starting from the womb, does significantly impact you on a mental, emotional, spiritual, physical level. If you are stressed, saying you're pregnant and you're stressed out by whomever, or your conditions are not great, that can restrict the nutrients that you give to your child. Your child can be born with a lot of higher risk of anxiety, depression, autoimmune diseases, things like that. When that psychologist did that talk and she was just going through these symptoms of children who are raised by parents that, for whatever reason, whether it's their fault or not, were deficient in meeting certain emotional and nurturing needs, they were often, she said, her patients were, especially women, the ones that were always overworking, hyper perfectionist, neurodivergent, ADHD, worked hours or were a boss at their job, had struggles in their romantic relationships. There are different things that your mother, from a biological perspective, has to give you. Not even the father can give you, because I was asking that. Throughout that whole thing, I felt like my main parent was my father, and I was so grateful to have the kind of father that I had. And he definitely was very instrumental into the success I had today. I had a mom and a stepmother, and my father was the one who took me to buy my first bra, who told me what a period was, who did my hair, did all these great things. He's not even the type of man, you look at him, he doesn't even, he's a very masculine man, by the way. But
Fathers are definitely needed.
yeah, but I think these men know, because I asked him once, I said, why did you do all these things? And he said he didn't know if it was going to get done if he didn't do it. So I had a mother and a stepmother, and he knew that I was not getting certain maternal needs. So even though I know there's this narrative in the Black community that the men don't show up, a lot of these men do, and a lot of these men have cause to have their complaints about women. And it is important, whether you are the mother or the father, that you show up and be intentional in your child's life.
Oops, I love that. I love that. So GMB Health, please play the video again. We are actually about to play the video again. This is Fly Nubian Money. Today we're talking about the number one factor for your child's growth and success. It's being revealed in this video that we're about to go to right now.
Do you guys know the number one outcome or the number one indicator for how children grow up to thrive, whether or not they actually do?
I thought it was the daddy in the house.
Absolutely not.
What's
Believe
that?
it or not, it is the quality of their mother's happiness.
Wow.
Wow.
Damn.
The quality of their mother's happiness is the number one indicator as to whether or not a child will grow up to thrive. Because if you have a depressed mother, if you have an anxious mother, if you have a mother with post-traumatic stress disorder who is having to disconnect from her own body, she cannot show up to nurture you. She cannot show up to support you. She cannot fully step into that space. And what she will teach you about being in relationships with other people, whether you can trust them, whether you can trust yourself, whether you can actually be committed and connected to somebody and know that they will reciprocate that to you in a healthy way. She teaches you that not through her words, but through her actions. And so what I will say to you, sis, is that you have to decide for yourself how you want your children not to just grow up in your house, but to grow up in this world, because you are teaching them that right now through how you are living your life and showing them how life is supposed to be in this roof with this man.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. So
I felt that, because when your kids is important to you, man, that's what you want. And for somebody in the comments that said that their mom thought their mom was jealous because they were trying to do better than them, that's crazy. You always want my kids be like, I'm gonna make more money than you. And you are, and you will, because you're gonna be my ticket out the ghetto, homie. So, I love it. I want them to do better. Good moms want their kids to do better.
Absolutely. Let's look at the stats. Can we throw the slides up for the stats around a happy mother? They say happy mom, happy life. I know they say happy wife, happy life, but same thing. We're gonna throw those slides up. There we go. So, healthy mom, healthy child. Studies funded by the NIH indicate that children with happy and mentally healthy mothers tend to perform better academically and socially. Research shows that a mother's mental health and happiness significantly influences a child's emotional and cognitive development. Okay, so we have research backing these things. Now, single fathers and child development. Research also shows that children raised by single fathers can thrive just as well as those raised by single mothers, emphasizing the importance of quality parenting. Okay, that's the balance. We go back to that. Quality parenting. So there were some men on the video that gave us commentary. Can we pull that up as well? So there was two comments that I saw that I was like, oh, we got to talk about these. So Mazarek says, wonder how the single father handles these responsibilities. And then Symbolic said, so kids raised by single dads are doomed. So I think that it is important that we have balanced conversations when we have these conversations, because I never want us to feel like we're taking one side over the other or that we're male bashing. But I think this panel has done a really good job of saying it's the person who's giving the care. Athena's father was that for her. My mom was that for me. Constance's father was that for her. Lala's mom, stepmom was that for her. So it's not just only the mother. It's the person who is putting the seeds into the child. It's the person who's doing the nurturing. That is the number one factor for your child's growth and success. I also think it's important to notate how it can change from generation to generation too, right? So if you think about a Constant where it was her father that gave it to her, now she's the mother who's doing it for her children. So it's not always the same. Sometimes a toxicity is what transfers from generation to generation. If we use, I think Athena was talking about, it was her grandmother and then her mother, but Athena at her, she's like, she could say, not on my watch. If the buck stops here, I'm gonna change that. So some of that is being consciously aware of what we're doing or what we're seeing being transferred from generation to generation. Now, from a father's perspective, what would anybody want to say to the fathers? I think we've kind of hit on it already, but I just want to make it crystal clear that we do understand.
I think we got to get out of this battle of the sexes talk that we have been seeing exacerbated on social media. Because if you talk good about moms, then that means you got to bash the dads. If you talk good about the dads, so I think we have to stop doing that battle, especially Black people. We are I don't watch anybody else on social media, so I don't know what they do, but I just see when I'm watching on Instagram and my algorithms come up, I see men and women bashing each other constantly. And we got to get out of that. Like, we need each other. We can't procreate without each other. So we got to start learning how to work together and stop the bashing.
My father wasn't in the household, but he was in the neighborhood. See, I've got such a weird situation. Like, my whole neighborhood was my village. My father lived in my grandparents' home, but my birth mother chose the aunt that didn't have a girl because all my other aunts had girls. So she chose the aunt. This was my father's side of the family, because my birth mother's side of the family were very racist, and there was no way she was going to leave me with any of them. So she trusted my father's side of the family. So even though my dad was not like per se in the house, my dad was at the house all the time, or I was over at his house all the time. So he was also a very positive force in my life, and he was just a down home dad. Like, I remember driving on the tractor with him. I know how to do the country. I was out there doing the thing. I remember my father took me to my first father-daughter dance, and that was something he had never done before, even though he had previous daughters. I was the youngest one, so I remember dancing on his shoes in first grade, those types of things. So I am with you, Constance. I'm so tired of people wanting to blame the other side, because there's always an other side that always has something going on too. It's not to say all women have problems. No, we don't. All men have problems. No, they don't. It's how we show up for our children, because it's not all about dads, moms. We need both.
Yeah, we can't have babies, but I guess, through technology we can, but not naturally.
We need both. And so this is why I'm so very grateful for what I call my village, because not only did I have dad on one street, I had aunties, I had uncles who was married. I like 60 years. That's what my goal was. I wanted to do that, so my village period was important. And when my village was happy, so were the children. My cousins and I had the best time. I don't know what you're talking about. Shoot, we was out there making mud pies, climbing trees, doing big wheels, jumping in, catching snakes, running through. So it just is a whole community thing. And that's what we are getting away from. That's what concerns me the most, because everything right now, politics, family, parents, we're all, you don't do this, you don't do that. Stop it. Yeah. We all need each other, and it's okay to see differently sometimes. Right. You need to see that. But this fighting is getting us nowhere, and it's getting worse every single day.
Yeah.
true.
You know, you said something that I think was impactful, and I don't know if anybody else caught it, but you said, my mom gave me to my aunt that didn't have a daughter. And you recognized that she didn't give you to her family because they were racist, but she took the time to think, where's the best place to place you? And I'm not going to put you in a place where you have to compete with somebody else's natural daughter. Let me give you to someone who doesn't have a daughter, who may have an interest in a daughter, so that she can love you like her own. So even in that, she was thinking about you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes, and
That's
I'm grateful for that. Joyce may not have been perfect, and she had a crazy wild life. When I say she was a tumbleweed, she was a tumbleweed. But when I got to meet her, I still had a lot of her qualities, y'all. I mean, my brothers and sisters look at me sometimes and they go, how did you learn that? You didn't even grow up with us. So there is more to just DNA and you being raised within that DNA. You still have that. Even though I knew that my mama was my mama, which was my auntie, I still respected Joyce for making the right decision for me.
That's good.
I love that. And I think to your point, our mothers can have positive and or not so positive, which is why, again, I said I agree and I disagree with the clip. I do agree, but I think you have to talk about both sides of that coin, because it can also impact us. Like if we go with Athena's story, it's first of all, thank you for sharing your story with us. I need to say that. I said it behind the scenes, but I want to say it in public, because familial conversations can be very traumatic. And I didn't even think about this conversation being triggering for someone who may not have had the best or positive experience with their mother. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and being open. And it can be a tearful conversation. I get that way when I talk about my dad sometimes, but I think when you don't think about the other side of children who either didn't have their mother or didn't have the great relationship with their mother, when we hear these types of clips and we're doing high fives and yeah, it's the mom and we don't think about the youth,
The other side.
the people who were brought up without their mother, and that's a different story. It's a different side. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Athena. Let me ask you this. What impact do you feel a parent's unresolved traumas or stress have or put on a child and or a child's development?
I think that unresolved trauma has a significantly negative impact on a child's development and how that may manifest. And I typically, when I've met people and I've had friends who've had similar situations and things like that, you really go two paths. It's either you're like, okay, I have a shitty parent or childhood situation and I'm just going to be like a loser in life, or you become like this hyper over, I need to achieve, I need to be the best, I need to always constantly prove my worth and validation through success, which is the latter, which is the route I took, right? Especially between the parents, the psychologist, and I wish maybe we can have her on here, Dr. Akaranda Smith. She said that the unresolved issues between the two parents, especially, the children become the container of that. The children, anything that has not been worked out. So, and also the unresolved issues that parent may have comes down onto the child. So it's so crazy, because basically how my mom treated me was basically how my grandma treated her. So that is how that generational dysfunction gets passed down, because that's what you're trained to do, or that's what you're known to do. You know, nothing was ever good enough, and nothing was ever good enough. I was like always a top performer in school. I basically raised myself in a lot of different ways from a behavioral standpoint. My parents didn't really have to wake me up and tell me to go to school or anything like that. But I did it thinking that, okay, if I was the best child, then I would be loved more, or that was going to happen. And when that didn't happen, as I would wish to receive it, I just took that as, okay, I need to try harder. So then it becomes this vicious cycle that you eventually have to go through. And especially as Black women, when we do not get our emotional needs met, whether it's a familial relationship or a romantic relationship, oftentimes we don't take a look and say, okay, maybe it's the person or this relationship. We internalize that and be like, oh, I need to work harder. Oh, I need to do this more. Oh, I need to. And then we're stressed out. We have all these autoimmune diseases. We have all these triggers. And we're like lighting ourselves on fire to support everyone while we're like drowning in the weight of everything. And that is very common. 80% of all autoimmune diseases are held by women, right? And the doctors have linked how emotions, our emotional state and dysfunction creates that disease in the body that create these autoimmune diseases, because women are often the emotional containers for most relationships. So when looking at whether it's a father, the mother, caregiver, unfortunately, historically, maybe we didn't have language, maybe we didn't have the self-awareness, but most grandparents and more mature adults weren't thinking about, oh, I need to go to therapy, oh, I need to get a massage, oh, I need to have self-care, oh, maybe there's a difference because I'm giving myself or the best of myself to society, and when I come home, I'm drained and I have nothing left for my children. We didn't really have these discussions, and I think that's why it's so good and healthy to be on this platform and having these discussions now to bring awareness to the things that we need to do, especially in our community where we're already economically disadvantaged. We're already facing like post-traumatic slave syndrome and all of these things. So we unfortunately will encounter these issues more often within our relationships.
You brought up a good point around parenting. I often say that the quality of a child's life is based on the relationship between the two parents. And the relationship between the two parents is based on if somebody feels like they lost something. So if a man and a woman are together and they amicably agree that this is not going to work, then they part ways as friends and there's peace, they can co-parent and they raise their child and the child gets the benefit of that. If the man and the woman part and one party feels like they were betrayed, let down, that they didn't get what they signed up for, the other party has to pay for that and the child is going to suffer, right? People ask me all the time, how do you and your son's father parent so well? I did not miss out on anything. Like I didn't miss anything. And so we've been cool. He's one of my best friends. We could sit and talk on the phone for 2-3 hours today. When he comes into town to see my son, he stays at the house. When I go out there, I stay late with him. Like we are cool. Like my dude, like we are good. We cool. We make plans together. I call him, let me tell you what your son did today. Like that's my go-to. That's my partner in crime when it comes to raising the son of ours. And so how two parents get along, even when they're not together, impacts the child, which is why I go back to it's how the child is nurtured. It's whoever the caregiver is. It could be the mom, it could be the dad, it could be both. It could be the relationship that they see the two parents having. Constance, how can parents separate their issues from their children's experiences?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I want that life. Lene, I want your life right now. I promise you. Because some people aren't mature enough to you probably when you said when a person feels like they got the short end of the stick and maybe they are a little bit more bitter, and so you can't control what another person does. And I model my parents. My parents been separated and divorced since I was 14, and I wanted my parents really to get back together until I was in my 30s, y'all. And so I was just talking to my kids about that the other day. I was like, didn't y'all want us to get back together? They're like, no. I said, but I wanted my parents to get back together until I was in my 30s. They're like, yeah, that's crazy. But then I look at it, I'm like, yeah, my dad would not be alive right now because my mom would have stressed him the hell out. But it wasn't until my dad got married to his current wife that I was like, I finally gave up the ghost. Even when he was with his second wife, I still held on because my parents are still really good friends and they respect each other. So that was the model for me. They respect each other. They always say, my dad always says, your mama's a good woman. I remember when they was together and my mom would act crazy and he would be like, your mama's a good woman. She just got the devil in her, And I'd be like, leave her, Dad. But my mom has never talked bad about my dad. My mom always be like, your dad's a good man. So they talk really well about each other. And so today they created this really cool village. So in the city I lived in California, all of us lived out there. So I moved out there first. Everybody else moved out there after. And my parents are best of friends. My dad's wife and my mom, I call them sister wives because they get along. You know, they grew up together. They grew up in a small town. So he went back to a reunion and then came back with a wife. But my mom knows her. So they all get along and they all love my kids. So she's been around since my youngest was born. And so she loves my kids like they're her grandkids, and they all take care of each other. It's so cool. My mom was just I was talking to my dad yesterday. My mom was at the store getting him some groceries because his wife is out of town. So they all take care of each other. She does that for his wife, and my stepmom does things for my mom, and they're just a family. And that's what I love. And I'm like, that's what I want, because my parents have always been that way. You know, even when they weren't together, or maybe they weren't talking because of the other marriage that he had, they still had respect for each other. And I think that's important. And it doesn't matter, you know, if you feel like you got the short end of the stick. The point is, you should love your kids more than you hate your ex. And if you did
that, say that again for the people in the back. You should love your kids more than you. Did you say hate or dislike?
Hate your ex, because I feel like I'm hated.
All right, I want to go to the chat.
Here's where the hate lies, because I'm living my best life and I'm happy. That's it.
Living my life like it's golden. Living my life like it's golden. Okay, so let's go to the chat. In the chat, we're going to bring y'all into this conversation. What are your thoughts on the connection between a mother's happiness and a child's success? Okay, that's the question. What are your thoughts on the connection between a mother's happiness and a child's success? Or you can answer the second question, which is, have you noticed any patterns in your own family where a parent's emotional state influenced the children? So that could be in your home, that could be in your sister's home, that could be in somebody else's home. It could be you. It could be your emotional state that was influenced by your mother or your father. So let me know in the chat. I know we've been having this conversation, but I want to know what you guys think in the chat. Today, we are talking about the number one factor for your child's growth and success. We watched the clip where the woman talked about, Dr. Spirit said that it's the mother, that the mother is the one that determines the happiness and the growth of the child. The number one indicator as to whether a child will grow up to thrive is closely related to the quality of their mother's or primary caregiver's happiness. And so we've been talking about that all day today. And so go ahead and leave me some comments. We're going to throw them up on the screen. Deborah Will Win says, yes, love your kids more than you hate your ex. Now that's bars, okay? Unresolved child trauma is so good. I think she meant is no good. GMB Heath says, we have to realize that's not me, but I can improve me, right? So we have to recognize that we can improve upon ourselves. MC Fact says, getting psychological counseling / therapy is important. And I definitely think it is. You get self-awareness, you get self-growth. And so, do I have another comment? I guess I do. How can we support mothers and or primary caregivers in achieving happiness and emotional stability for the sake of their children, Lala?
Well, once again, I go back to community. Like when you see that someone is struggling, you can step in and help that household. In our neighborhood, if an aunt was down and her 5 kids needed to be fed, then the aunties got together and they had dinner on the table. Like, these are the things you have to be able to go out and breathe sometimes and allow open ears for other community to let their stress out, so that then when they go home, they feel heard themselves, so that they can pass that along to the next generation. Here's what I love. I'm gonna mention this because it's giving me life right now. I am loving the Olympics, and in the fact that Simone Biles and a couple other of the young ladies on the gymnast team, there was another country young lady who had won her first gold, and they both bowed down to her to give her her wonderful experience. Y'all have heard me say this before: if you can't help, don't hurt. The fact that these queens all supported her and was happy for her to have her first gold says a lot about community. So, it's not about you winning all the time. It's about you sometimes helping the community uplift one another. That is how we need to instill this into our families, into our neighborhoods, into our children. You're never going to hear me say anything different because I know just how important it is because I lived in it. And so that's what I try to do. I know it's a different world, but my nieces know they can call me anytime. Auntie Lala got you. If you need to call and just talk, you can call and talk to Auntie Lala. If one of them has an issue, they know they can come to me and tell me things in secrecy because they need to be able to express their hurt, their joys, their woes, their struggles, so that they could take a deep breath, get the word put into them of love, so that they can turn around and do the same for their children.
I like that. So we're gonna go to. I have one last slide that I want to go to, but before I get to it, I'm gonna cue it up with your guys' comments. Okay. Holistic Hood Healer says the first question. I say a lot of mothers be feeling like they can't live after they experience trauma, so that leads to hate of the child's success because they haven't healed for real, which is sad. Because I feel the mother should be motivated by their child. MC Fact says it's a combination of mother and father for a child's healthy mental upbringing. Whether it's a mom or a dad, it's stressful being a single parent. That stress affects the children. I'm going to go to Janelle, and then I'm going to go to the slide. Janelle says there is a big connection because if my husband had upset me and I was not mentally happy, I have lashed out at my daughter. I had to apologize to her. Mental health is everything and awareness. So let me go to this slide. One of the comments under the post, under the video, was from Esther. And Esther said, I'm waiting, it was the last one. You got to take off the funny. Thank you. Totally. I always wondered why I ended up with mommy issues when it was dad who was violent. But of course, it's the example of what women deserve to put up with and their preoccupation with drama rather than happiness. Whew. When I saw that comment,
I have to say something, though. I have to say something on this because the fact that someone in our comments said she apologized to her daughter, that right there shows maturity, shows love. For you to turn around and say, I'm sorry to your children, shows that you're not perfect. I commend you, Mama. I commend you very much for doing that. And I think that also ties into this because if you see that your mother's struggling and she's hiding things and things of that nature, then you can never show your children that, hey, I'm human too. And that's what I love about Constance. Constance will tell you in a heartbeat, I ain't perfect, but her kids love her to death. Yeah. And you see that because I stalk her.
But to your point to that, my daughter used to be like, Mom, what are you teaching me as a woman? Because you didn't fight. You didn't fight for this. You didn't fight for that. And I acquiesce to a lot because I needed peace. My peace was way more important. And so I couldn't fight and be in all this darkness and all these low vibrations because I needed to get to my purpose work. So if it's money and material, I'll make that again. Here, take it. Then another 100,000. Here you go. Take it. So I can get to peace. And sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes you don't fight. And so she's like, well, what are you teaching me about being a woman? Or what are you teaching me about my relationship with men? And I had to explain to her, I needed my peace. And this is just material, girl. We can get it again.
And so when you see a comment like that as a daughter, so when you see a comment like the one from Esther, right? And she ended up, when you think about a mom dealing with a violent man, you would think that she would have daddy issues, but she ended up with mommy issues, almost to what Constance says. Instead of choosing her peace, instead of choosing herself, instead of choosing, I need a better environment for my children, the daughter ended up with mommy issues because she saw her mom to be harmed. So again, I just want to go back and
it makes her look like she's weak. My mom is weak. She couldn't get out of that. And I think when you explain whatever it is that you were going through during that time and show your humanity as a mother, then they understand why you made the choices that you made. And I think that's one of the things that probably parents don't do often is let them know why I did this, why I'm staying. I'm not as strong as I hope to be, you know, whatever it is. But I think your kids will be empathetic if you told them, if you just had conversations with them.
And then too, I think I might add, so yes to the weakness piece, but also and I think what I'm saying is exactly what you're saying. Why are you staying? Why are you taking this? How come you're not taking us into a different situations, right? So that mommy issue with mom, this is the person who's doing the violence, but this is the person who is staying.
Yeah.
So I think it's whoever is taking care. I think it goes back to the number one factor for your child's growth and success is based on whoever is doing the nurturing, the leading, the taking care of, and planting the seeds.
Yeah.
Most will be the person who puts the most positive in, but the other person still plays a factor. The other person still plays a role. And I think we have to be cognitive of it. Could be the mother, it could be the father, it could be the grandparent, it could be the aunt, it could be whomever has taken a valid and positive interest in the well-being of that child. Stepmoms, stepfathers, right? Deborah says, I screenshotted Esther's comment. So let's go back around the room. We're going to do our final comments about today's conversation. I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm going to let you leave your final thoughts and then let people know where they can find you to continue to keep up with you and or support you. We'll start with you, Athena.
Well, I did not expect for this topic to take the turn that it did, but I'm hoping that some of the thoughts and experiences I've shared will enlighten you all and to give as much emotion and empathy and love to your children, because it does matter. I do think to talk about one of the topics is why, you know, children kind of resent their mothers. I do think there's some kind of mental and biological thing where regardless if it's the mom or dad, children expect their mothers to be better than their fathers. I don't know. The blame usually comes on a woman, and that could be fortunate or unfortunate, but there's a higher expectation of morality to be held within a relationship by the woman. And one of my greatest mentors, Salkis Ray Gray, she always said that women dictate morality in their relationships, and the morality they enjoy is the morality they bring, right? So I think on that level, yes, children, whether or not the dad could be toxic as hell, right? The blame kind of always will kind of go to the mother to some extent, because the expectation is that the mother should have known better or hold the morality within a relationship. Whether you are a parent or a child, please look into getting the help and resources that you need to deal with your mental and emotional states. I had to. And if you guys want to connect with me, you can find me on social media at We Wealth Women, my website, wewealthwomen.com, or listen to my podcast, the We Wealth Women podcast.
Thank you so much, Athena. Lala?
You can't pour from an empty vessel, period. I always say be the light, but you know, sometimes your light dims, so you have to be able to let other people pour into you as well. So make sure that you are surrounded by those who can do that. Sometimes it's not even your community. Sometimes you have to go to another part of your life to get that pour into your life, because you have to be happy before you can make anyone else happy. I mean, I grew up always trying to make sure I wanted to fit in somewhere. And until I decided that I am good enough, I am pretty enough, I am smart enough, then that's what made my spark shine harder. So make sure that you pour into others and let others pour into you. And you can find me at bit.ly/Laura Key Info. I have lots of great free resources for you there for moving abroad, buying a home in the States, buying a home in Portugal, and fun things like spring cleaning, because we all need that. So go on over there and download your free stuff.
I love it. Miss Constance Carter.
We all go through different things, peaks, valleys, ebbs, flows, and it's not where you are when you're at your worst, but it's how you get triumphant and come back up. When I was going through my divorce, I was going through therapy, and the therapist was like, I didn't tell her, anything about me. She Googled me. And so she was like, I read your book, The Secret to Breaking the Broke, what I was looking for. She said, I read your book. And I was like, okay, that's what's up. What you think? And she was like, I think, why are you coming to me? And I was like, what? She was like, you have all the answers in your book. And I'm like, I don't remember. So she said, your assignment is I want you to read your book. Right. So just because you have these principles don't mean you're going to know how to tap in when you're going through the thing. So I read the book that night and I was like, girl, you wrote this. I was like giving myself a round of applause, patting myself on the back. Cause I was like, yo, and that book, guess what? Changed my life. So I know that there are basic principles that we know to be true when we're going through things. And it's important that we tap into what we know to be true, the things that can bring us out, the things that can take us to a higher elevation, because your kids need to see that. Your kids need to see you at your best. And so, yeah, we go through things, heartbreak, heartache, trauma, pain, death, divorce, all of those things. And you're going to go through it. You're going to feel it. You got to sit inside it, but you're going to grow from it. So just make sure your hardships that you go through, because this is what I do, they're the blueprint that I use to help other people. And so what I've taken from that is now I help Black women from all over the country build their wealth. And so that's what I do. So I have this thing called the Net 7 Collective, where I take women through a 12-week journey where we just use different strategies and tools and practice that really help them to increase their net worth. And it's a beautiful thing. I created something that I needed coming outside of my divorce. It's beautiful. So if you're interested in being a part of that collective, go to bookwithconstance.com, or you can go to my website. That's where you can find me. Everything I am Constance Carter. But I love Black people and I love Black women. And I think we need each other to survive. And so that's what it is.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Ooh, okay. So today has been great. Whenever I'm hosting, I always try to find something that I think not only is something that's different, but also just something that gives back, something that we can all pull from, something that touches our audience, right? And so this went better than I even thought the conversation could go. It was truthful, it was honest, it was emotional. I don't like to just talk about problems. I also like to talk about solutions. I hate to just like throw up content at people and then just leave. And so today I think that we really did a good job of making sure that as parents, we are thinking about what goes into our children. It's not just the mom's job. It's not just the dads. It could be the aunts. It could be the grandmas. And so I want to thank everybody for tuning in today as we conversed on the number one factor for your child's growth and success. MC Fact said, let's hit that like button on the way out. Holistic Hood Healer said, this was really good. No cap. Y'all do more of these. I wrote a book called A Child's Pain. I love unapologetically Black people. And we have a lot of work to do, but I think when we have these types of conversations, it makes the work easier because we get to find out that we're not alone. Our experience is not ours by ourselves. Some of the things that we've gone through, the traumas that we've experienced, others have experienced it too. And in these types of environments and spaces, we get to get healing, we get to get resolve. And so I hope that that's what you've walked away with today. I am Dr. Lene Javette. This is Fly, a Nubian Money. You can catch us here every weekday, Monday through Friday at 1:00 p.m. Eastern. If you want to get notified for these conversations, if you've tuned in and you have enjoyed them, you can text the word Queens to 87948. You can text the word Queens to 87948. You can also go to flynubianmoney.com if you like to get free tools, resources around your financial wealth and or education. You can also go to Spotify and replay and or re-listen to any of our shows. Just search for Fly Nubian Money. As always, thank you, Queens, for being here and adding your commentary to this dialogue, to this conversation. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable. Come back tomorrow, everybody else. That Fly Nubian Money will be back again tomorrow at 1:00. I am Dr. Lene Javette. Again, I'm a monetization strategist and business coach who helps Black entrepreneurs, service-based entrepreneurs who package and sell their expertise to brand your brilliance and triple your revenue. As always, have a blessed day. You got to continue to be Black because that's what you are, but also be one in everything that you do.
Ooh, I love that.
Tomorrow.
Great
Bye, everybody.
conversation.